Tyler, what if you're wrong about the crypto market this time? What if crypto is about to enter into a bear market? What if Bitcoin is about to fall to $50,000 and Alt are about to fall by 90%? What if you're wrong? These are all questions that not only have you all asked me several times, but I've also asked myself. And today I want to give you guys a very quick update on exactly what I would do if my general bias and thesis is wrong, and if crypto is entering into a real multi-year bear market. Now, let me make something very clear real quick. I'm not under the belief that it's impossible that we're entering into a crypto bear market right now. I just don't particularly think that it's that likely. And my primary reasons come from the fact that retail thinks we're going into a bear market, and retail's almost always wrong. Major institutions are still buying, and there are still a lot of short trades left to be liquidated up at all-time highs that I would be shocked if market manipulators didn't push us up to in order to access. And so no, I don't think it's impossible that crypto is entering into a multi-year bear market. I just think that it's not so likely. But again, I could be wrong, so let's go up to the office and let me show you exactly what I would do if I am. Now, if I am wrong, that means that crypto is about to enter into a multi-year bear market that brings Bitcoin's price down anywhere from 40 to 60% and altcoin prices down anywhere from 80 to 90%. Now, although that is a scary thought, and it's a thought that even I don't personally like, one thing that I will say is that it would be an absolutely massive opportunity that I would absolutely take advantage of. Because I'm under the belief that the crypto market still has a ton of opportunity in front of it. I think there's still a ton of gains, a ton of growth, and as we continue to push forward into the future, crypto is going to have a larger and larger impact on the world as it actually provides value from a technological perspective and a financial perspective. And if that is the truth, which I believe that it is, that means that going into a bear market will only give us an opportunity to purchase these asset prices at much lower prices than they are now and ride into eventual gains later on in the future. And so even though, again, it's a scary thought, it's actually not really all that scary if you zoom out enough and you have a long enough time horizon. Now, you may wonder, well, Tyler, how are you going to go about buying the cryptos? How are you going to go about purchasing these different cryptos and taking advantage of this opportunity? And my game plan would actually be incredibly simple, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it on my chart here in a second. Because all that I'm going to do is I'm going to locate key levels of support and liquidity, and I'm going to accumulate Bitcoin and top altcoins at those levels. And that's all I'm going to do. This is what I did back in 2022. This is also what I did back before the 2021 push, before we all started generating crazy gains. And I'm just going to repeat that again. And so let me actually jump over to the chart now and show you exactly what that looks like. So first and foremost, I'm going to look at the Bitcoin chart because this is where all the action happens. What Bitcoin's price does will dictate what the entire market does. That is just the truth. Okay. And what I'm going to say is this. Okay. Well, if my game plan is to buy Bitcoin at key support levels and key levels of liquidity, then I need to identify them. And that's actually not a very difficult thing to do. The first thing that I personally like to do is look for those key zones of support. Where did we establish macro support? You can see that we built some support right here before Bitcoin's price pumped to the upside. We also built some support right here before Bitcoin's price to the upside. And one thing that I do also like to do is use my RSI as a bit of confluence. In which of these instances did we start to see the oversold signals flashing on the RSI? We saw it back here right before Bitcoin pumped. We saw it right here right before Bitcoin pumped. Okay, great. So now we know we have one strong level of liquidity right there, one strong level of liquidity right there. One of those being at $75,000, one of those being at $49,000. These are the levels that will serve as the strongest zones of support if Bitcoin's price does start pulling back to the bottom side. Now, in addition to that, one thing that I like to do is I like to look for key levels on the Fibonacci golden zones. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into how this indicator and this tool works, but I do have a video releasing extremely soon on how to use it, so just stay tuned for that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over actually to my Fibonacci retracement tool, as you can see here, and I'm going to draw in these two golden zones now. From this low all the way up to the high, that gives me this zone right here. Fibonacci golden zone, boom. And then from there, if I now go from the low below this right down here, as you can see, bam, to that high, it now gives me this Fibonacci golden zone. And so now what I have is a massive zone of support as identified by the Fibonacci golden zone. I have a key zone of support right here as identified by this previous support. Now another lower golden zone of Fibonacci support, and then one last key zone of liquidity back down at $50,000. Now I could continue this trend downwards, but I am personally not under the belief that Bitcoin's price during a bear market will fall below $49,000. I think it would be very difficult. It's possible. I just don't think it's likely to happen. And so because of that, I'm not super concerned about looking below 49K, but if the time comes that I do need to look below 49K, well, that's what I will do. And so this is what my current game plan is. My biggest purchases will occur if we hit these key zones of support as identified by these previous establishments, this one right here and this one right here. So I will do a very big purchase, and by very big, I mean very big purchase right here on Bitcoin, first and foremost at this one, which is right around $75,000. I will also do a very big purchase on Bitcoin right here at $49,000 because these two levels are going to serve as very important zones of support in which we're going to see many buy orders and stuff very, very much so built up at them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some buy orders here in these Fibonacci golden zones. I'd probably do a medium purchase in this Fibonacci golden zone right here because, of course, this is a more of a short-term Fibonacci golden zone, but it is a strong level of support. So I'd do a medium purchase right there, and then I would do a large purchase back down in this one. And again, it's not like a one-time thing. I will just be doing buying while we're in that zone. So say, for example, Bitcoin's price falls into the zone for a while. While we're in this zone, I will be just doing some buying as often or as regularly as I want to. And then if Bitcoin's price comes back down to this, I'll do buying in that individual moment. Then if Bitcoin comes down into this range, I'm going to be doing a good bit of buying. And then if it falls back down here, I'm going to do a buy in that individual moment. Do you see how I kind of coordinate the golden Fibonacci zone and the key zones of support themselves, which is a little bit lower, there you go, these key zones of support themselves to identify where I'm going to be buying in ranges or when I'm going to be buying individually? That's all that I do. And I know that it might seem complicated, or it might seem very simple to the point where it's kind of dumb, but trust me, this works very well. Matter of fact, this is the exact system that I used back in the previous bear market. What I did back here as Bitcoin's price was starting to fall is I laid out a couple key levels of support. I said, okay, we clearly have some support right here. We clearly have some support right here. And then we, of course, went in and we drew our Fibonacci support. So what we did is we went in, boom, right here. And then we started to draw out these Fibonacci golden zones. The very first one that I drew out was this one right here. Boom, like this. Let me get that drawn up for you. There you go. And then the next one that I drew in was the one that was actually from this low, this previous low, this key zone of support. Let's go ahead and draw this in. The last low before the top, all the way right there. Boom. And then this was our next Fibonacci golden zone. So what I had in this moment going into the last bear market, and if you were on my channel, you saw me do this live, I had my key levels. I said, okay, I'm going to do some buying right here. I'm going to do a very big purchase right here. I'm going to do a medium purchase here. I'm going to do a large purchase here and a very big purchase if we come all the way back down to this previous high. Now on this chart, it doesn't represent that, but you guys know that Bitcoin's price did basically interact with every single one of these levels on its way down. And what was beautiful about it was that even though, yes, I did do some purchasing right here and Bitcoin continued lower, then I did some purchasing right here and Bitcoin continued lower, then I did some purchasing right here, getting bigger, and Bitcoin got lower. As I was buying in bigger and bigger increments, the lower that Bitcoin's price went, my average cost was falling like a rock, to the point where at one point my average cost for Bitcoin was just $24,000. And immediately, as the crypto market started to recover, because of these dollar cost averages that were done throughout this time frame as we pulled to the downside, I was able to lock in some insane profits to the point in which I'm still taking profit to this day from these purchases that were done here. And so again, I know this may look simple and it may look so easy that it looks kind of dumb, but trust me, laying out just a couple key zones of support and being willing to do some accumulations in those key zones of support will set you up in a very good way to where even if the bear market does come around and say it gets like this and it gets real ugly and then we rally, that average cost is going to drop very fast. You're going to be, you're going to be in a good spot. And when these gains do eventually come back, you could be absolutely rolling around in profits. And that's my game plan with Bitcoin. Now you may wonder, okay, Tyler, well, what are you going to do with altcoins? Well, in a bear market, I only make moves on my altcoins based on what Bitcoin is doing. So if Bitcoin's not in a buy zone, I do not buy altcoins. Why? Because they're still going to follow Bitcoin. And so I might as well just look at Bitcoin. When Bitcoin's in a buy zone, I will then correlate that with my altcoin positions and maybe do a little bit of accumulating on them. If I do a medium purchase on Bitcoin, I'll go do a small purchase on alt. If I do a very big purchase on Bitcoin, I'll go do a rather large purchase on alt. If I do a really, really big purchase on Bitcoin, I'll do a pretty big purchase on alt. But I only move on alt based on what I'm doing with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin blatantly controls the market in the middle of bear markets, and you might as well follow Bitcoin because it's going to be performing the best anyway. And so I don't really look super heavily at altcoins specifically without keeping the context of Bitcoin in mind. And so hopefully this makes a lot of sense. And hopefully you can see that, yeah, I'm not really scared of this market. If Bitcoin wants to come down to these levels, I have very clear identified levels that I will be doing my accumulating in, because I'm super confident that Bitcoin's price easily can come back down, find some support, and use that support to eventually continue back towards the upside when the time is right and when the market is more conducive for growth for Bitcoin's price to eventually push to $200,000 or higher. And so to me, it's like, yeah, I may be wrong, but truthfully, am I really? Because what's going to happen is Bitcoin's price is either going to rally and then we're going to get an all-time high before going into a multi-year bear market, and I'll be right, and I'll get to lock in even more gains from the purchases that were done back here, or Bitcoin's price is going to go into a bear market, I'll be able to buy at lower prices, and then it's going to generate me even more gains. So I either get some gains right now or even more gains in the future. So at the end of the day, you can say someone is right or wrong, but one way or another, profit is profit. And I have a long enough time horizon to be able to bear through another crypto winter if need be. So time will tell, and we shall see how it all plays out. But one way or another, do understand that I am prepared for any outcome, and I hope you are too, especially after watching today's video. I'll see you all in the next one.